How are things going on the campaign trail, Mark?
I think very well. I mean, we do a lot of door-to-door, and the feedback that we're getting, that people truly see the economy getting better. You know, the unemployment rate is at 8.5. We're in 0.2% of the national average. And 3 years ago, when it was 14%, nobody thought that was possible. Median income continues to rise. State of Michigan, for the first time in over a decade, we have moved our position from dead last as a place to want to do business and expand business to second in the United States. And we've improved our bond rating, and quite frankly, there's been more money, so we've been able to reinvest back in education that the last 4 or 5 years have not been done. So in general, in the broad base, people I think are feeling a whole lot better about where our state is today than it was 2 years ago.
Do you attribute that to some of the programs that the leadership in Lansing has brought forth under Governor Snyder?
Absolutely. I think one of the important things and one of the misnomers, unfortunately, that are talking points of the other party is that we gave tax breaks to big business. That is not true. It's just flat out wrong. We moved to a 6% tax on LLCs. There are 95,000 of them in the state of Michigan. Those are the mom and pop businesses. And we went from a 23% tax bracket to a 6%. And those are the people that are hiring, who are buying and reinvesting in our state. You talk to a Ford Motor Company or a Dow Chemical, this year they will pay more under the governor's tax plan, but they feel pretty positive because they know that our state has improved dramatically over the last 2 years, both in terms of employment of 100,000 new jobs and that the level of revenue is increasing.
What's been going on in Lansing recently that you might want to update the constituents?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is we're trying to still deal with MITSERS, which is the retirement program for the teachers. We felt we had a deal with the Senate a month ago. I understand in talking with the Senate Majority Leader, he feels that when we go back this August, that we'll be able to, I think, strike a deal that will be much better for our teachers in the classroom. And that's really what's important, is making sure that our teachers are treated well and fair and have a safe retirement for when they get to that point in their career.
Can you talk a little bit about what the current legislators have done in Lansing to help out the education program here in Michigan? I know your opponent, Gretchen Driscoll, has brought up a couple of times that she feels that not enough has been done for the education in Michigan.
Well, I think what you have to look at is actually where we are at as a state in education. Here in the 52nd District, we have high-performing schools. But you take Detroit, Highland Park, Benton Harbor, those schools are struggling. And in order to have a strong economy going forward and job opportunities, we've got to make sure all our children have access to high-quality education. And I think we have now started down that path and being able to, what I think, do a better job for the school districts that are failing.
On that note, what do you think would be the implications if voters go to the polls in November for this emergency manager law, if they repeal the emergency manager law? Do you think that would have adverse effects on the school districts in Michigan?
I think it would have adverse effect on where their emergency managers are engaged presently. But that certainly is the will of the people, and if that's the case, then we need to find other alternatives to make sure that our hardworking taxpayers of the state are getting value for their taxes that they're paying.
In previous interviews and stories for local newspapers, you've talked about the personal property tax reform.
Yeah.
What's going on with that, and do you think that the legislation will take that up this year?
PPT, or personal property tax, I don't see the legislative body and the House taking that up. I think everyone that I've spoken with feels pretty much the same way. It's an archaic tax. It isn't competitive with the states around us. But in order to do something, we must find a replacement for that tax, so we don't cut back on revenues to schools, libraries, villages, and cities that rely on it.
Now, by replacement, what would be some options, or what would be some?
That's a good question, and that's what we're actually struggling with, is trying to find that replacement. Now, of the PPT tax returns that are filed in the state of Michigan, a very high percentage of them are less than $200. And so one of the things that we've looked at is addressing PPT, that people that are paying less than a certain dollar would not have to go through preparing and filing a tax return regarding that, because it costs the preparer more money to do it than they actually end up paying in taxes, and really focus on the larger organizations that pay the bulk of the PPT.
In preparation for today's interview with you, Patch went out and asked a couple of residents if they had questions for their state representative. And our first question comes from Adam Duke. He asks, are you in support of the 25 by 25 Michigan Jobs, Michigan Renewable Energy Standard? This proposed ballot initiative will require our Michigan utilities to provide 25% of the state's energy from renewable resources by 2015.
Yeah. I think we're just now engaging ourselves in that conversation about 25-25. I've met with and heard from a lot of folks who are in favor of 25-25. But on the other hand, I've spoken with our chambers, our local chambers of commerce, who have taken positions of opposition to that. So I think there's a lot more information that has to be gathered prior to seeing something of that nature go into effect.
Our next question comes from Jennifer Kundak, who asks, do you have any pro-choice endorsements or pro-life endorsements, and why did you vote to restrict the availability of legal abortion by requiring excessive restrictions on clinics in Michigan?
I have not received a pro-life or pro-choice endorsement. I did not seek either one. The second part of that question is if someone goes into their dentist office or their doctor's office, those facilities are licensed, and I think this legislation was the idea of moving to make sure, if indeed a woman chooses to terminate a pregnancy, that it is done safe and sound in a clinic that is registered into a level of medical standards.
Yeah, building on that, there's been a lot of buzz with the Republican leadership in Lansing for the past couple of months, feeling that there's an arbitrary attack on both women in the state and women in Lansing. Can you speak on that aspect of the arguments that the Democrats are bringing?
I don't see that there's an attack on women, hardly. I mean, really, I think when I go door to door, the things that I hear from both men and women is that they're looking at jobs, and they want a sound economy. And they want to make sure that they have equal access to jobs. They want to make sure that they have the opportunity to have a fulfilling career and to be paid for it, and to make sure that they have health benefits.
If there's one message that you want voters to take with them as you head into the campaign season, what would you say that is?
That I think that certainly what is resonating very strongly is people see that this economy is improving. It has taken a great deal of sacrifice on a lot of people's part in order to get our economy headed on the right road. But Michiganders are very strong people, and feel now that we are turned this state around and we are headed on the right direction, that more people will be able to benefit from a healthy economy.